I never really wanted to share this story, not because I feel embarrassed by it, I don't, but because the people who only know me through rockets, companies, and headlines have already created a version of me in their minds that doesn't have space for what I'm about to say. They've decided who I am, and the version they chose doesn't sit with his mother in a small apartment in Toronto, eating peanut butter sandwiches and wondering if any of this will actually work. It doesn't lie awake as a child trying to understand why the man who was supposed to protect him made everything feel unsafe instead. It doesn't carry something silent for decades and then one day realize that the thing he was carrying always had a name. But that version they decided on isn't true, and I've allowed too many untrue things to stand without correcting them. So let me tell you something real. My mother's name is Mae Musk, and before she was anyone's mother, before she was a model or a dietitian or the woman standing beside me at the Met Gala looking like she owns the room, because she does, she was a girl in South Africa walking ahead of her family's truck across the Kalahari Desert, searching for a path through the sand. She was about 8 years old. Her parents handed her a small amount of water and pointed toward the horizon and said, "Walk." And she walked. That is where I come from. Not from wealth, not from comfort. From a woman who learned before she could fully understand the world that the world does not stop to check if you're ready. You move or you don't. And if you don't, the sand covers you. You need to understand that because nothing about who I am makes sense without it. When people look at what I've built, they almost always ask the wrong question. They ask how. How did you dare to enter aerospace? How did you look at an industry controlled by governments with endless budgets and say, I can do this better, faster, and cheaper, and I'll do it privately? How did you look at the entire car industry and decide it was wrong? How do you face failure, public failure, very visible failure, and show up the next morning as if nothing happened? The answer most people expect is intelligence, vision, or high tolerance for risk, and yes, those matter, but they aren't the root. The root is simpler and older than that. The root is a woman who left an abusive marriage in the middle of the night with 3 children and no safety net and built something from nothing because there was no other option. A woman who worked 3 jobs at once and told her children they would be okay, even on days when she wasn't fully certain that was true. A woman who never, not even once, told me my ideas were too big. Other people told me that. Teachers said it. Journalists said it. Investors said it. My mother never did. She called me her genius, before that word meant anything to anyone outside of science fiction. Long before I built a company with that name, she used it for me because I was 3 years old, memorizing encyclopedias and asking questions that didn't have simple answers yet. Instead of treating that as strange or uncomfortable, she treated it as something special, something worth protecting. As a child, I didn't understand what that meant. You don't understand the power of unconditional support until you've experienced the opposite clearly enough to know the difference. And I experienced the opposite in specific ways, in ways that left marks that didn't disappear quickly. My father is not someone I speak about often because talking about him gives him attention, and attention is something he doesn't deserve more of. But I'll say this clearly once. He was not a good man, not just difficult, not simply complicated, not flawed in the normal human way. He was deliberately cruel. He made the people around him smaller because it made him feel bigger. I watched him do that to my mother. I watched it closely enough that I can still describe how it felt if I let myself, which I usually avoid. When my parents divorced, I made the decision at 9 years old to go live with him. I took an overnight train. I left my mother, and I need to be honest about why. The real reason says something important about what that environment does to a child's mind. I didn't go because I wanted to. I went because I believed that by staying close to the source of danger, I could somehow control it. I had already understood very early that my father was the main source of instability in our world. And I absorbed the deeply flawed but very sincere idea that staying near danger was safer than turning away from it, as if closeness meant control. It didn't. What it gave me instead were years of being told I wasn't enough in ways that were detailed and relentless. Being criticized with the specific energy of someone who needed you to feel small so he could feel secure. I absorbed that. I turned it into something that, from the outside, looks like extreme drive, and in some ways it is, but I know the difference between ambition and escape. And for a long time, what I was doing was escaping, building things fast enough that the feeling of not being enough couldn't catch me. My mother never made me feel that way, not once, not even in the years when what I was asking her to believe in looked completely unreasonable by any normal standard. I left South Africa at 17 with about $2,000 and more determination than direction. She didn't try to stop me. She had raised me to move. She had lived her life moving. She was not going to become the thing that limited me. I want to talk about what that actually cost her because people usually only see the outcome. They see the name, the companies, the rockets, and they assume the beginning looked impressive too. It didn't. The beginning looked like her working research jobs and modeling jobs and running a dietitian practice all at the same time because none of them alone paid enough. It looked like a rent-controlled apartment and meals planned around what was affordable, not what was ideal. It looked like a mother telling her children they were fine on nights when she was quietly trying to make the numbers add up. She never showed us the full weight of it. That was deliberate. She made a clear decision that her fear was not our burden, that her exhaustion belonged to her, not to us. And I understood much later than I should have that this was a very specific and very expensive form of love. She carried her own struggles quietly so we could grow without feeling crushed by them. There was a time when I built a company that almost broke me. Tesla was close to failing while SpaceX was losing money at the same time. I went to bed some nights honestly unsure whether either would survive the week. What I reached for during that time, the thing that kept me functioning when functioning was extremely hard, was something I learned by watching her. You don't show the weight. You keep moving. You protect the people depending on you from the full cost of holding everything together. No formal lesson was ever given. I just watched her do it and understood that it worked. But here's the part that took longer to recognize. The part I've thought about more as I've grown older. That same quality, absorbing difficulty without showing it, protecting others from the cost of your own struggle, is powerful in a crisis. It's necessary when the rocket explodes, or the company's close to collapse, or the world says you're wrong about everything. You don't panic. You don't let them see you calculating survival chances at 2 a.m. You keep your voice steady. You keep your direction clear. You move forward. But that same quality inside small, personal spaces, in moments that aren't emergencies, but just quiet evenings where someone wants to be truly known by you without performance, becomes something different. It becomes a wall, not an aggressive wall, a protective one, but still a wall. I have not always been easy to be close to. I want to say that plainly. Softening it would be dishonest, and I'm trying not to be dishonest here. The people who tried to be close to me, not close to the public version that runs companies and gives interviews, but close to the actual person, often met someone who didn't always know how to receive them. Someone who moved toward problems to solve instead of feelings to sit with. Someone who could explain in precise detail what was wrong with a rocket engine, but grew quiet when the conversation shifted to what was wrong internally. That isn't random. It came from somewhere specific. It came from a childhood lesson that said, don't show the cost, keep moving, protect others by being untouchable. For years I followed that lesson faithfully because it worked. In the world I was operating in, it worked extremely well. The world rewards people who don't hesitate. The world looks at someone who takes massive public failure and shows up again the next morning and says, that person is strong. And strength builds companies. Strength pushes rockets off the ground. Strength keeps things alive when they are close to collapse. What strength doesn't always do is open the door and let people step inside. I have thought about my parents' marriage more than I have ever admitted in public. I have thought about what it did to my mother in particular. She married a man who reduced her daily, who told her she was stupid and unattractive and dull, with the steady rhythm of someone who believed shrinking her was his right. She stayed longer than she should have because that was what many people did then. Because the choices available to a woman in that place and time were limited in ways that are difficult to fully understand from the outside. And when she finally left, she left with almost nothing except 3 children and a determination to survive that I have honestly never seen matched by anyone I've met since. I have met extraordinary people. That isn't exaggeration. I have been in rooms with people who changed entire industries, people who carried impossible pressure without breaking. People who made decisions that required a level of courage most humans simply do not have. And none of them possess the exact quality my mother has, which is a complete refusal to stay defeated. Not that she wasn't knocked down, she was, but getting back up happened every single time without drama, without performance, as if quitting was never even an option, as if the alternative didn't exist. I inherited that. It is probably the most useful trait I have. It is also, if I am honest about it, something that came with a cost I didn't fully understand until much later. The cost is this: when you learn that love looks like endurance, when the example of love you absorb as a child is someone carrying enormous weight without complaint, someone protecting everyone else while hiding her own needs, you grow up with a definition of love that does not include asking. It does not include needing. It does not include saying, I'm struggling, and I need you to sit here with me. Don't fix it. Just sit. My mother loved her children in the most real and expensive way I have ever seen. And the shape of that love the specific form it took, taught me that loving someone means holding up the structure around them and never letting them see how heavy it is. That is beautiful. It is also, if you are not careful, a way to become someone no one can fully reach. I want to be clear, this is not criticism. It isn't. She gave me everything she had in the form she knew how to give it. She survived something that would have destroyed most people. She endured a marriage built to make her feel small. And what she created afterward is something I am proud to come from. The way she raised us came from someone who had been diminished and decided her children would never feel that way. Every word of encouragement, every refusal to say my ideas were too big, every moment she treated my 3 a.m. encyclopedia questions as interesting instead of exhausting, those were direct answers to what had been done to her. She was building the opposite of what she survived. And it worked. It truly worked. But sometimes, in quiet moments, I think about what it cost her to always be the person who never showed the weight. I wonder if there were nights after we were asleep when she sat alone with the full difficulty of her life, with the fear that the money wouldn't stretch far enough, with the loneliness of raising 3 children in a city that wasn't originally home, carrying all of it alone. I wonder if in those moments she wanted someone to sit beside her, not solve anything, just witness the unfiltered version, the version not arranged for anyone else's comfort. I don't know the answer. I know she survived. I know she built something remarkable from a starting point that would have flattened most people. I know that today, at 77, she is more completely herself than almost anyone I know, more willing to say what is true, more present, more open, less guarded than at any time I have seen. She walks into rooms now, and the room adjusts around her instead of the other way around. Through some mix of survival, time, and conscious decision, she became someone who no longer makes herself smaller for anyone. Watching that over the years taught me something I could never have understood from advice alone. It is possible to put the weight down, not deny it, not pretend it never existed, but actually set it on the ground and stop carrying it all the time. And the version of you that remains after that is not weaker. It is more whole. It is a person with full energy available instead of spending half of it controlling how much shows. My mother and I have not always had an effortless relationship. 2 people who are both strong and both private about struggle do not automatically know how to sit together without performing strength. We have always loved each other. That part was never complicated. But love with history is different from love without friction. Ours has history. There is a certain tension that comes when 2 people shaped by the same pain try to meet each other without the mask of being fine. We had to learn that slowly. What I can say is where we are now. And where we are now is something I am deeply grateful for, even if I do not say that publicly as often as I should. She defends me when the world is at its loudest against me, not because she has to, but because she truly believes in what I am trying to build. She still calls me her genius. She still posts about me with a pride that, if I am honest, still reaches a part of me that very few things can reach anymore. There is a specific kind of belief that comes from someone who knew you before you were anything. When you were just a strange kid in Pretoria, memorizing encyclopedias and asking too many questions. That kind of belief lands deeper than applause or headlines ever could. She visited my place in Texas not long ago, the small house, the one that somehow upset people, the tiny house. She slept in the garage and thought it was hilarious. That is who she is, a woman who came from almost nothing, who endured things that would permanently damage most people's trust in the world, sleeping in her billionaire son's garage and laughing about it, completely unbothered, completely herself. I don't know if I've always shown her what she means to me in the way she actually needed. I am trying to get better at that. I am better than I used to be. But I know this. The specific form of strength I carry, the one that kept Tesla alive in 2008, and kept SpaceX going after 3 failed launches, and kept me operating in periods when operating was not guaranteed. That strength has her fingerprints all over it. She walked across the Kalahari Desert at 8 years old, looking for a safe path. She left a marriage that was breaking her and built something from nothing. She told a child whose ideas were too large for most rooms that his ideas were exactly right. And then she let him go. She raised him to leave. She allowed him to leave. And she kept moving forward herself. That is not a small act. That is, if I sit with it honestly, one of the most extraordinary forms of love I have ever witnessed closely. I have built companies that changed industries. I have sent rockets into space that many people said could not be launched privately. I have made decisions at scales most people never face in a lifetime. And the deepest layer under all of that, the part that made it survivable when survival was uncertain, is the kind of belief my mother placed in me before I had done anything to earn it. She decided I was worth believing in. She decided that fully and without visible doubt, and she never withdrew that belief. If you want to understand what shapes a person, don't start with the companies or the headlines or the record of decisions made under pressure. Look at who believed in them before there was proof. Look at who carried the cost of raising them without making the cost visible. Look at who taught them, not with speeches, but with the daily example of her own life. That you move forward, not because it is simple, but because moving forward is who you are. That is my mother. That is where all of this began. And I have not said that clearly or often enough. I am saying it now.